Today we have an exclusive, not just with a visionary, activist, social justice warrior, and all-around humanitarian, but we also have something way beyond that. A woman who went well beyond the uniform, someone who understands what it means for true advocacy, who's also a finalist for Miss Veteran America 2023 competition. So this is an exclusive interview segment, one that is a crucial part of showcasing the woman behind the uniform and the advocacy efforts of the contestants. And we had the pleasure to have one here today. Can you share your personal journey as a woman veteran and what led you to participate in the Miss Veteran American competition? But first, please introduce yourself to America, the world, because I know you as Alfie,
Right.
as everyone does, but
Right.
who is Alfie?
Oh my goodness. Thank you. That was an absolutely wonderful introduction. I can't believe it. So, who is Alfie? Alfie is a girl from North Philly who grew up in West Oak Lane and then settled in Mount Airy and has a whole trail of experiences and journeys along with that.
But your journey involved more than one uniform, correct?
Yes, it did. I began my personal relationship, I guess you could say, personal, professional relationship with the United States Army on 9/11. It was somewhat of a coincidence. I contacted a recruiter on 9/10. I had just come out of a not-so-good marriage. So I joke with my children. I tell them, the marriage was bad, but the kids are great. So we just move on, right? We do what we have to do. So I contacted a recruiter on 9/10 and made an appointment for the next day. And as we all know, the next day was 9/11. So it was a somber event, and I signed my initial enlistment contract at 2:15 in the afternoon. I was private first class. I was 29 years old.
And there's a second uniform you have in your life.
Right. When I came back, I did a tour of OIF-1, Operation Iraqi Freedom 1, from 2003 and 2004. I did that tour with my oldest brother, and we were both sergeants at the time. When I returned to the States, I felt the calling to the chaplaincy. 2005, I received a direct appointment as a second lieutenant chaplain. I was the first African American in Pennsylvania to receive that. I had a soldier who, she and I, we're still battles today. We talk all the time, we're battle buddies. And she says to me, LT, why don't you come into the police department? We're always hiring. The Philadelphia Police Department is changing. You should put an application in. So I did. And I ended up in a class of September of 2007. I think it was 2007, yes. So when I became a police officer, I was 37. Yeah, and I retired from the Philadelphia Police Department February the 1st of 2022.
So everyone at home, please take note. There is no Photoshop here.
Oh my goodness.
There's no After Effects. The studio has access to it, but we did not render any of this video.
Oh, thank you. That's very, very kind.
Well, you don't even look like you hit 40. So
Oh, thank you.
the fact that you entered the police force at that age and you were already chaplain, you've already made headways and trailblazing in the armed forces, and you just kept moving up the ranks in every capacity and everything that you were doing. So please explain. Can you share your personal journey as a woman veteran and what led you to participate in the Miss Veteran America competition? Because you've already became a trailblazer. You've already led this legacy in Philly PD. There's no one that you can ask questions about, hey, Alfie the cop, and get a negative story. From Philadelphia to Delco, there is no negative publicity of you, which is unusual as Philly PD. Yeah. There's always something negative to say about Philly PD.
Oh my goodness.
There's always something negative to say about someone who's coming back from the military because they got anger issues and all these things. But you redefine the narrative of these things. So share this journey with us.
It was the Philadelphia Police Department was a very interesting engagement for me. I had a tremendous opportunity to work in the community, to be in the community, to solve a lot of problems, to help a lot of people. As a single parent, I am a provider and a protector of my household. So I was very, very fortunate in many regards, even though I did not promote in the Philadelphia Police Department. I stayed in the blue shirt. At one time, of course, I did have an interest in, in the sergeant's rank, kicking that thing around again, because I was a sergeant in the Army. However, I was doing my first master's at the time, and I was working last out. I was assigned to the 39th District, so I worked from 11:30 p.m. until 7:30 a.m., and my children went to school exactly 14 minutes away from the 39th District because we lived 15 minutes away from the 39th District. So I would work last out from 11:30 to 7:30, get home, get my children to school, and then go to class.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I lived that way for 3 years. And plus, with my part-time job as a soldier, I maintained that as well. So it was a character building experience. And back to the sergeant's rank, I had a sincere interest in promoting in the police department, but I realized that because my life had become completely saturated, I was, raising children, and then I was in school, and it was just too much. I just didn't have it there to be a sergeant anymore. And it had nothing to do with the Philadelphia Police Department. It was me. I didn't have the commitment to really give the rank the respect that it deserves. So I decided the best situation and decision for myself and for my children was to continue to serve the city of Philadelphia as a police officer and continue to love and provide for my children and continue my work in the Army. But your question was in reference to Miss Veteran America. Okay, Miss Veteran America, a battle buddy, of course, of mine, Chaplain Lisa Norway, was a finalist last year. And she put it all up on Facebook, and she's like, Alfie, you got to do this. You got to do this. Oh, my God, Miss Veteran America is everything. You just try. And I was thinking, oh, my God, like, I've never done anything like this before. I've never been in any type of competition, of this magnitude. But if, Lisa has faith in me, then I guess so, So I sent in my initial application with a bio, a resume, all that good stuff, a letter from Colonel Egley of my command. She's my raider. And what else? It was a bunch of other stuff. They receive, I think it's like maybe 500 applicants, and then they, separate the wheat from the whey, and then they come down to, I think maybe 200, and then conduct an interview. We flew down to Orlando, Florida. But out of the 200, I think there were only maybe 25.
Wow.
Yeah. And that was in Orlando, Florida. So we conduct an interview, and then the talent portion is lip singing. and which I think is very fair because, you know, that evens everything out,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And then after Orlando and the final interview and your audition, they select 20. So I'm a finalist with the 20. And I go back. I have to do another interview in October. And from the October interview, they select 10. And then from the 10, 3 are selected, the winner and first and second runner-up.
Wow, that's.
I know. It's so much, and it was such a coincidence of epic proportions, really, because you and I've helped you. I volunteered with your food justice, and I think I told you about my tiny houses. Yeah, and I have invested in tiny houses in Chester. I have one tiny house, and I'm about to purchase 2 more. So I'm working with HUD VASH, to house homeless veterans in Chester. Right now, Chester has between 56 and 60 homeless veterans. So what they're going to do is match me with, well, not me, but, you know, my tiny house with a homeless veteran. So when I heard about this, Miss Veterans America, and this is what we're doing, we're raising money for female veterans, women veterans who are homeless and their children, which is the fastest growing homeless population in the country. I said, wow, this is kind of interesting. Like, I didn't expect us to be such a good fit like this.
You know, I want to touch on that, but I also have to say, I've said this to many people, and I don't know if I've ever told you, but you always remind me. And it's funny that you said about the whole singing, lip syncing, because I didn't think about it until now. I was like, wow, she did have to do this whole lip syncing thing. I'm like, Black Canary. Like, you remind me of the comic book superhero Black Canary.
Oh.
And it's like,
Oh,
you know,
goodness.
she's able to sing. She was at one point a lounge singer, and all around badass superhero. Like, right there. She's like the one that trains everyone to be a superhero.
Thank you.
And it's like, you know, I'm like, man, every time she tells about herself, her story, her struggle, everything, Black Canary. Like,
Thank you.
DC's #1 female superhero is right here in the studio.
Thank you. Thank you.
But and now, I have to ask, what inspired you to start Follow Your Bliss and invest in tiny homes for veteran community to address homelessness among women veterans?
Follow Your Bliss. Thank you for asking. Follow Your Bliss. Before I started my LLC, Follow Your Bliss was literally something I used to say to people. I would say, you know, well, you should follow your bliss. I would tell my children that, my friends that, my mom. I'm like, Mom, you should follow your bliss, you know. And then when I thought about creating an LLC, I said, well, wow, what is it that I always say? I always encourage myself and others to follow their bliss. And it just makes perfect sense. Also, of course, something I picked up from seminary, you know, with Joseph Campbell. And if memory serves me correctly, it is The Hero Who Wears 1,000 Faces, one of my favorite reads. And he talks about following your bliss. So it was something that I always said. Now, with the investment in tiny houses for homeless veterans, I started off looking for literally a property and, well, a house, you know, 3-4 bedrooms, something like that. And I was in one of the homes I was looking at purchasing, and I said, you know what? I wonder how much time someone would actually spend in this room, in the living room. And I thought about that to some extent, and I said, well, you know what? I think we're spending most of our time in one room. Unless we're going to the kitchen or going to the door, we're spending most of our time in one room, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, well, what if I looked at something smaller, a mobile, a trailer, a tiny house, and see if I can, do my own work, my own magic, my own upgrading on that, I think that would be a lot more feasible for myself and the veteran. And so that's how the tiny house came about.
You've seen how I live. I'm off grid. I don't have a problem with tiny homes.
Right.
I've raised a couple of kids inside what I have, and you've seen it's not like a grand mansion. It's not even on standards. It's actually a little slightly larger than the average tiny home. 65 feet in length, but it works because you have less headache.
You have less headache. Your utilities are like.
And if you're done right, you can be like me, where I'm completely off grid. The only thing I give to the city is my sewage. Like everything is off grid, and it's amazing. I have friends who spend almost $1,000 in the wintertime to heat their home, cooking, water, and I spend like every 6 weeks $200, if that.
And see, and we're saying heat their home, but really, what do they need the heat for? For that one room that they're going to spend the most time in. But your heat, you can't fix your thermometer to heat one room.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And you're right. It's really unfortunate because I wish I can control the flow of heat in my mom's house, which she has a huge house, and then all those like rooms that no one's using that has to be heated up. Right. And the way it's designed, the heat has to go to the coldest room, heat that up. So it's always going to heat that spot to make sure, which, if no one's occupying it, it's going to stay cold.
It's going to stay cold,
Especially if you don't think about the fact, hey, maybe I need to change that window, but no one's in there.
Right.
So it's really interesting. But what's also interesting is your impressive educational background.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you.
Including a PhD in public policy, and administration with a concentration in terrorism, mediation, and peace. Yes. How do you plan to utilize your experience to address issues faced by women veterans?
Oh my goodness, that is a loaded question.
I told you I wasn't going to make it easy for you.
It's okay, thank you. To utilize my experience, well, I have so much experience. It's an officer, a military officer and an enlisted person, because I was both. I was enlisted before I became an officer, and then as a cop. And one of the things that I learned when I was on the job, I worked the street, I worked in patrol, is what it really takes is patience. Because you know what, there was a time where probably every police officer could say, okay, we got 8 jobs. This person hit this person, domestic, assault, and when I say jobs, I mean calls. Mm-hmm. However, I think because people's lives, our lives, have become so incredibly complicated, you throw that out the window. That doesn't happen anymore. What it takes is you have to literally listen to the person and find out what happened to them. So at one time, it was like, okay, well, the same thing that happened to them happened to those days are over. So for me, in helping and supporting female veterans, I'm very fortunate because I'm still active as a soldier, and I'm around a lot of young people. And I'm constantly talking, constantly listening to them. What's going on with you? What's going on with your life? So I'm able to take that experience and apply that to female veterans who are experiencing homelessness, or any veteran experiencing homelessness.
And, I think I mentioned, my father's military, my uncle's military, grandfather. Like, I have a whole slew of relatives who's, right. I think we've hit every branch of the armed forces.
Right.
And I have to commend you for that, because I grew up with my uncle actually having to live with us after his time of enlisting. And I've had various relatives who had to live with us after their time of enlisting. Mm-hmm. People think of the uniform, but they don't think of the person.
Right.
And whether it's male or female, there's a person there. But however, there is disproportionation of support for women veterans.
Right.
There's more support towards men who are exiting the armed forces versus women who are coming out, especially when they're dealing with a family.
Yes.
and the
Yes.
woman behind the uniform is not looked at or cared for.
Right.
And I think that is one of the great injustice in this country, which profess to support and advocate for our armed forces, but the moment that time period that they retire or medical leave or some reason of exiting the armed forces, that safety net is no longer there for them.
Well, you're absolutely correct. You're hitting the nail right on the head, because when a service member returns home, you are literally dependent upon the gratuity of family and friends. There's no other way to look at it. I mean, you're absolutely correct when you're talking about family members who have lived with us and or friends in some cases. It's a very sensitive thing, because you're dependent upon them to tell you what's going on in the neighborhood. How has the neighborhood changed? I mean, it's not uncommon for me, even now, to turn on TV or listen to the radio and hear a song that I've never heard before, ever. And when that happens, I know that song came out when I was on orders or when I was in the war or something. I mean, it happens to me quite often. I'm like, what movie? Or someone will say something like, oh, did you see such and such? And I'm like, what? Oh, everyone saw that. And then I'll ask, well, what year did that movie come out? And once they tell me the year, I know why I've never seen it and have never heard of it. So you're absolutely correct in saying that. It's a very sensitive thing. You know, as veterans, we are a protected group in this country because our lives simply aren't the same as everyone else. I mean, we're only 1% of the population. We have a volunteer army, so we don't have the same thought process in that regard as the average person may have. We're just built differently. So we are very likely to have different things going through our mind, things that someone who has never been in the ranks, never been in the trenches, won't think about. Someone who's never been in the foxhole won't have a thought like, oh, I wonder how my battle buddy is doing with their PTSD right now, because they don't have a reason to think about things like that. Or what percentage am I, or what percentage will I be with my VA rating? The average person's like, what are you talking about? So, yeah.
Ignorance is bliss. When you don't know, you
Upon
can.
occasion.
Yeah. Well, in many situations in life, though, it really is the truth. If you don't know about that reality of that individual or that segment of the population that has to deal with and struggle with, then you can sleep soundly. You can
Yes.
have a quiet meal at home and then waste that food and not think about not only the veteran, but the thousands of millions of Americans
Yes.
who are struggling in this country.
This
Ignorance
very
is
true.
bliss, because you don't have to think, because you're not exposed to that reality.
Yeah.
Because that reality is not a narrative that the masses or those who are in control of the media will want people to be exposed to.
Yes.
And that narrative is not a reality either, because it's something that people don't want to think about as well. It's the ugly reality of our world and our country.
Yes. When we were doing the food justice, remember? And I would say to people, oh, yeah, you have to meet him, Pastor Fisher, you're in food justice. What? Food justice? What people say, what? Food justice? They, like you're saying, they are totally unaware of the fact that even here in Philadelphia, there are families, there are children who go to bed without dinner. And it's a thing. It's not something that we're just making up.
And you know, if you remember, we had a couple of people who were volunteers, but they were also upset because people who came who were undocumented to get food. And
Yes.
as I explained to them, I mean, at the end of the day, these people have kids. Irregardless of your political bias or whatever it is, at the end of the day, this is a child that will go hungry in America. How could that happen? How? In this country, in this day and age, it's 2023, and there's a child right now who has gone without a meal this entire day.
It's not okay.
And so, yes, you're right. It's food justice. However, this makes me wonder about something. As a retired Philadelphia police officer, you've had a diverse career path.
Yes.
How has your experience in law enforcement influenced your advocacy efforts and involvement in retroactive justice initiatives?
Thank you for asking. I wrote my dissertation, I shared this with you, on restorative justice and recidivism. Yes, women over 50, nonviolent offenders from an East Coast perspective. It has had a tremendous impact on me. And I'll share with you the first impact. I was on the job. I was working in South Philly. I was working in the 3rd District. Last out, of course, what was I in school for? My second master's? No, I finished my second master's. I had just started my PhD research. No, I finished my second master's. I was in the thick of my PhD coursework and developing my theses. And Walmart down on Chris Columbia, you know, Walmart down there, they have this policy, if someone steals, then if the box or whatever isn't damaged, and they take their picture and let them go, you know, that type of thing. But if it is, then they call 911. So the box was damaged, and they called 911. And I responded to the job, and I walk in, and there's this young woman, and even till this day, it still affects me. I have no idea. She was just a very special person. And I see her, and she's sitting on the bench. She's handcuffed to the bench. And I think she stole a tomato, a loaf of bread, some mayonnaise, I think it was, some bologna. But the kicker was there was this little box with a heart in it. It was a little silver heart. And she ripped the box open, which is the reason why they called the police. So I see the receipt, I see the tomato, you know, I see the box, and I say to the security guard, just give me a minute, okay? He says, okay, so I go outside of the room, like they have her, you know, handcuffed to a bench, you know, excuse me, in the security room. And so I go to the Sarge, and I say, Sarge, can I just pay for her items and call it a disturbance? He said, what? He said, what? I said, sorry, can I just, you know, just pay for it and just make it a disturbance? Because she's not hurting anybody. That's what I said. And he said to me, I'll never forget, he said, he used to call me Fee. He said, Fee, are you okay? I said, yes, I'm fine. That has never, ever happened to me, ever. I used to be what was referred to as a busy officer, you know, but I don't know what happened.
You had a moment where you saw the person, and because that's what you said. You saw her.
Yeah, it was.
You saw who she was. She was a person who was not a thief, not a criminal, not a lawbreaker in the real sense. She was someone who struggled.
She was struggling, so he made me put the job up. So he said, no, Fee, you cannot just pay for it. And so I said, okay. He said, I want you to put the job up and transport her. That means arrest her. And I said, okay. So I did, and I put her in the back of my patrol car. And so she started telling me her life. And I said, so where are you from? And she says, I'm from Florida. I said, well, how'd you get here? And she told me this unbelievable journey. She told me that when she was 16 years old, her mother committed suicide. And she was the oldest of 4 children, and her father was an alcoholic. And she dropped out of school to become a waitress. And of course, waitressing, you're just not going to, oh, thank you so much, make ends meet in most cases. So while waitressing, she began sex working. And sex working led to other addictions. And her brothers and sister were taken from her, and hence began her life of addiction and incarceration. And somehow she ended up in Walmart in South Philly and in the back of my patrol car. So I said to her, I said, do you know what? And she said, what? I said, there is no difference between you and I. She said, what? I said, you know what? It's only a hair of decision making, which has become the reason that I am driving this patrol car and you are in the back, as opposed to it being the other way around. It's literally a hair of decision making is the reason why our roles aren't exchanged right now. And she said, no, that's not true. That can't be true. You're a cop. At the time, I had a few ribbons from the police department. I have a heroism and a merit, and I used to wear them. You know, after this, I changed my mind. And she says, no, I see your ribbons, and you know, you're a police officer. And I said, listen to me. I told her, I said, I'm going to break a rule, okay? I'm going to talk about religion with you. When I told her I'm an ordained minister, I have been for some time, I said, do you think God looks at you and I and decided that Alfie is better? Do you think God thinks that I'm better than you because I have this uniform on and because I'm driving this car? You think God says, yeah, Alfie is definitely better. Alfie's better. She's the one we want. I said, there's no difference between you and I. God does not see a difference between you and I. I said, as a matter of fact, I told her, I said, I'll go even further. The difference is that you were caught. That's the difference. And I looked for her for a little while. I never caught up to her again because she changed my life. I resubmitted my theses. At the time, I was studying phenomenology and the archetype. However, I sharply modified to restorative justice and recidivism, women over 50 nonviolent offenders. It was because of her that I knew that I had to do whatever I could to have a significant impact on this element, on what's happening in this country with the arrest and the conviction of nonviolent offenders. Why are we doing this? Why? I mean, even from my own experience, my own family, my father was a nonviolent offender. His effect on me as my father was completely different from what I experienced with this young lady, because what I saw was a person who was broken. And so I said to myself, how is this fair? This is someone who has no hope and hasn't had hope for a long time. She has no hope. So now she's being arrested by me, and she's being charged with the crime of being hungry. How is this fair? How is this happening in this country? It's not fair. So I began to think about this, like, what if her mother hadn't committed suicide? For whatever reasons she did, she took her life. What if her father hadn't been an alcoholic? Or it doesn't even matter to me. Her whole story could have been a lie. The fact of the matter here is she's being arrested for stealing a tomato. That's the problem. That is the problem. Why are we doing this to Americans? Why are we doing this to one another? Why are we making money off of it? Why is it okay? So I as I said, I began to think about that very deeply. And I basically jumped into restorative justice and recidivism and what we can do about it to raise awareness about it.
there's no other words other than say
Thank you.
Black Canary.
Thank
Seriously,
you.
like, you're a living example of one. Not all Philly PD officers are bad.
Not all, no.
You're a true example of that, but also you are a light within the darkness. You are hope.
Thank you.
You are literally the personification of hope.
Thank you.
There is so many moments there that you're talking about that that a person gives up hope.
Yes.
And what you showed now is that, yes, that here of a difference. There's so many moments that you have to remember to have hope
Yes.
and to work through it. And that's easy said than done, but to have hope and to work through it,
Yes.
to persevere. And obviously, faith is a cornerstone in that.
Faith is a cornerstone because I really began to even go back into my seminary studies. And I started looking at words, like how many times is poverty mentioned in the Bible? How many times faith, hope, love? Love, I think it's 935 or more.
And that's funny because it depends on which love. There's
Right.
so many tiers that the
Five.
Bible talks about in as love. So it defines each one from the Latin to the Greek versions.
Yes.
And within those categories for each of those respectively, and then also for the Hebrew
Yes.
on what is, because they're very specific on what they're saying about love, how that love should be applied to each other, and what does it mean between us and God.
And what does it mean? Right. So it had a tremendous effect on me. And when I went back into my seminary studies and started looking at restorative justice, I said, well, wow, isn't this interesting? The first recorded, as far as we know, it's the written word. Some would argue that it was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where the four appeared. However, and I teach a workshop on this called Restorative Justice and Recidivism from a Biblical and Theological Perspective.
Ooh, say that again? That is a mouthful.
Restorative Justice and Recidivism from a Biblical and Theological Perspective. And I am going to break this down for you. I start with Daniel in the lion's den as the first person recorded, individual, organized, nonviolent, protesting, state-sanctioned violence. And I end with the Christ. Because if you look at the arrest of the Christ, it's the same way we do it now.
Mm-hmm.
They, no longer me, have an offender. The offender is identified, which the Christ was identified by what? By a kiss.
Mm-hmm.
And then the offender is transported.
Mm-hmm.
We call it CCTV. Biblically, it was transported to Pontius Pilate and incarcerated. There's some type of kangaroo court mock trial. And in his case, Pontius Pilate said, well, just beat him and let him go. That's something that we would refer to as a misdemeanor. It's enough to get your attention, but not enough to ruin your life.
Mm-hmm.
However, there was a change of course, and he was basically sentenced to state-sanctioned violence on crack. Therefore, he meets the cross.
And that's still also how the justice system works.
Yes.
If you have somebody who's loud enough to say, I want this person to be prosecuted because they hurt me. And, regardless if it was just a shove or a serious heated argument, the prosecutor would then turn around and say, yeah, all right, let's go because I don't have anything better to do. And unfortunately, we've had prosecutors who pretty much done that.
Yes. I haven't eaten lunch and that type of thing. And there are literally studies, research that shows that there is a difference in the judge's decision making before or after lunch.
Yeah. It's funny because I actually just finished writing up a report for someone. I finished completing their paperwork to be submitted to the Supreme Court. And it's actually against the judge on an eviction. Now, most eviction cases should be simple.
Yeah.
This judge had a bad day. So she didn't follow any of the protocols because this was about 10, 11 o'clock. So she was antsy. She was having a bad day already. She wanted to eat for lunch, and so she broke protocols.
What?
So she let people So she let the person who was supposed to be the landlord never showed up.
Oh my goodness.
A person who allegedly is the husband came in, completely separate last name. He identified himself as the husband, and this is what the repeated process, which is why no one ever removed anyone from the home, because this situation here. The guy says he's the husband, no paperwork to show who he is to the wife.
Oh my goodness.
There's a company that's supposed to be in control of the property. His name is not on paperwork. He just says he's the husband. So police, the sheriff, everyone's like, listen, take this to court because this doesn't make any sense what you're saying. And she has a lease. You say you didn't execute this lease. Someone else did who was in control of the property for 3 years. But it's your property. So it was this whole thing. And the judge just turned around and was like, well, I don't see what's on the docket. It was a technical error, a clerical error where the files wasn't scanned correctly.
What?
So a few pages showed up and the rest of them were blank, but they had a digital timestamp on them, showing that the documents were scanned in. So over 30 pages scanned in, and only 4 of them showed up because there was an error in the system. Now, according to the court system, when I talked to them, they said that there is an error with certain browsers. Not all the browsers will allow things to go through all the time. So they tell people that they are not even allowed themselves to use Chrome in there. So there's certain browsers they just can't even use internally. They won't tell people in the general public, and they just keep uploading these documents. So instead of the judge...
Sounds like a circus.
Like you said, it's a complete circus. And the funny thing is that if the lady who came in, she has her daughter with her granddaughter who's autistic, she has a son who's sick at home, and she's there in the courtroom and she's going pro se because she has no money. And because this alleged landlord took it from landlord-tenant court to civil court based on property, like land, not on the question of a building. And that's a way to segue away from landlord-tenant laws. So he took it to that jurisdiction, which the argument was it should be landlord-tenant. The judge was like, well, I don't see anything here. As a pro se litigant, you're supposed to have a judge who says, okay, these are the rules, this is what you do.
This is true.
The judge is supposed to have an understanding and compassion and hear all sides. This didn't happen. This is a violation of code of conduct. Now, this is a
violation of their constitutional rights.
Exactly. So, which is why it was being submitted to the Supreme Court, because this judge broke protocol and code of conduct because they had a bad day.
So sad.
And this is the reality of so many
people,
but also so many women veterans who get stuck in the rat races of the game. They're stuck in a hamster wheel, running around without that support. So it makes me wonder, with everything that you're doing, homelessness among women veterans is a pressing issue in America. It is a big issue in America. How do you plan to use your voice and position as a finalist to raise awareness and make a positive change here?
Oh my goodness, thank you for asking. My most effective and largest platform outside of people such as yourself talking to me and interviewing me, which I'm so grateful, is social media. Constantly posting, constantly talking about it, always. Social media, social media, social media. I find that to be a very, 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 very useful platform. But you know what the thing is? Let's say, for example, for me as a Miss Veteran America 2023 finalist, let's say this is as far as I go. I don't make it into the top 10 and don't make it into the top 3. Okay, I still see myself and I am still a part of Final Salute and the Miss Veteran America competition. So I see myself as a part of this entire mission to put an end to veteran homelessness for women and their children. It's just a wonderful opportunity, which I'm extremely grateful for, that I'm even able to use this platform to talk and say, well, hey, I'm a veteran. You know, I came back from the war. I slept on my mom's couch for 6 weeks, and then she moved me into one of her rooms. And then I stayed with my mom, I think, for about 6 months. And then I rented a place out for myself and my children. But that's really fast. And it's not even just that if a veteran doesn't have the money to, some veterans just aren't able to emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you come back, it's a culture shock. You're hearing new music, you're seeing new people, like I said, new movies. It's things change. You know, so it's really a time where you have to have tolerance and understanding and patience. So for me, I'm very grateful that I'm able to share my experience and say, well, this is what happened to me, and this is why I am a part of Final Salute and Miss Veteran America competition.
As a podcaster, you've likely had the opportunity to share inspiring stories,
Yes.
like today.
Thank you.
Is there a particular guest or story that has left a lasting impact on you and your mission to uplift other women veterans?
Oh my goodness. There is a very good friend of mine, and she actually interviewed me, but I'm going to talk about her anyway. Poetica Bay. I've known her since she was maybe 13 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have her next time to spill the tea on you.
Yeah.
Follow-up segment with your friend, like, hey, give us the tea. Who is Alfie?
Yes, and she's a wonderful, wonderful lady. I'm godmother to her oldest 2 children, and I'm going to become godmother to her son. So definitely Poetica is definitely amongst the most impressive people that I have spoken to in terms of her durability, being from Philadelphia. You know, Philadelphia is a very hard city.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing about it is, you really don't realize that Philadelphia is a hard city until you move, right? And when you go other places and you live other places, then you're like, man, Philly is rough.
You know, someone told me, oh, well, Chicago is horrible and all this. I was like, listen, I walked the streets of Chicago at 3 o'clock in the morning completely drunk when I was younger. I carry a gun at 3 o'clock in the morning when I leave my house in Philadelphia. Yes. You know, there's a different environment here.
It is, but you don't realize it until you leave and come back.
Mm-hmm.
How rough it is. So it would definitely be Poetica Bay, just as a woman who is from Philly, as a mom, and she's really just trying to show her talent and to make a way for herself and her children.
Being a finalist in Miss Veteran America competition requires dedication and perseverance. What keeps you motivated, and how do you overcome the challenges along the way? Because we talked about so many personal challenges, but this
Right.
here in this competition is occupying a lot of
It
time,
does.
energy, everything.
You're right. You're absolutely correct. It does. My sisters and my cohort, that's what we call each other. We keep one another motivated. We're constantly in contact with one another, constantly talking. This is what I'm doing. This is what I'm doing. You know, how are you doing? Do you need anything? So although it's a competition, I'm feeling that although the competition is between us and we're competing against one another, we are not one another's judges. We're friends. We're sisters. So that takes away a lot of the stress, being that I know that I can contact one of my sisters who's in the competition with me and ask her, well, what do you think about such and such and such? And I don't feel that in some way is going to take away what we're doing for Miss Veteran America. So I'm very fortunate in that regard.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Danny, how are we doing on time? 51 minutes. Oh, wow. Really? I didn't realize that. All right. 2 more questions, and then we can conclude with a wrap-up. Do you want me to hit personal or just leave the last 2 questions on the pageant?
Either one is fine.
Okay. The Miss Veteran America competition is about building a community and supporting one another, as you just identified. How have you experienced the power of women veterans uplifting each other, and how do you plan to continue this spirit of camaraderie?
Oh my goodness, thank you. I'm very fortunate, as I keep saying. My Colonel, Colonel Egley, I absolutely love her. She's the one who wrote, nice enough to write my letter for me. You have to have a letter from your command to go along with your packet to become a candidate. I plan on it by just offering my services to Jazz Booth and to Final Salute, saying, you know, what do you guys need? Do you need some volunteers? What do you need? What do you need help with? What can I do? How can I take my skills and my experience and help the candidates of 2024? So definitely, this is a relationship that we're in. I plan on it lasting a very long time.
The Miss Veteran America competition emphasizes the importance of showcasing the diverse roles of military women as mothers, daughters, sisters, and wives. How have these roles influenced your military service and your life beyond the uniform?
Oh my goodness. Thank you for asking. Well, my daughter, one of my daughters, my middle daughter, has been very involved in the talent aspect and my lip singing and what I do and what song I sing and what I wear. And she, picked out my costume and gives me all types of pointers. So that was something that I really didn't expect. I knew that I had to do lip singing for a talent, but I didn't know that it would bring my daughter and I closer together, which was really great. So now, even though she's 28 years old, we have something else to talk about now. This is something new that we can talk about. And also the second part of the question is, as a soldier, and actually I have orders this weekend, a lot of soldiers, female soldiers, they're looking at me and they're like, wow, a chaplain major, she's 52, and wow, she's doing this. And I'm like, yeah, like you should do it too. Apply, and let me know, and go for 2024. I want every female veteran to become a part and to become a supporter of Miss Veteran America competition.
As a finalist, you have the opportunity to inspire, role model for aspiring women, veterans. What advice would you give to young women considering a career in the military or those currently serving?
Oh my goodness. For young women, it's very interesting because, as I said, when I went to basic training, I was 29. I turned 30 in basic. And it wasn't until our very last PT test when my battles, they were running next to me, and I kept telling them to stop, run ahead, go ahead. And they're like, no. They used to call me Twist. No, Twist, we want to finish strong together. And I remember literally yelling at them, I'm 30 years old. Okay? Stop running next to me. You don't want to make my time. Your time should be at least a minute stronger than mine. So for women that are coming into the military, read. Do your research. Read about leaders who have been successful, whether it's, of course, our favored superstar Colin Powell. Okay, he's a total demigod. whether it's him or someone else, read to learn. Find out what it is that you want to do. When you have your choice of MOSs, decide, does this really work for me? Is this something that I want to do for the next 8 years, 10 years, or 20 years? It really is a plan, a map, really, is more of what it is. And this is what we should do in all aspects of our lives. Create a map. What do you want your map to look like? I'll tell you something from the movie The Secret. It was profound. They said people look at Michelangelo's David, and what we don't realize is that we are Michelangelo, and the David is you, is yourself. You're creating your own sculpture, and it's you, it's your life. So the advice that I would give is to create that, map that out. What does that look like if you were to cut pictures out of a magazine and create a vision board? What's on your vision board? Don't wait until you get there to say, oh, I don't like that. No, because by that time it's too late.
Being a Brigade Command Chaplain,
Right.
you have likely encountered various challenges. How do you approach your role in providing support and guidance to both cadets and cadre?
Oh my goodness. Communicate. I always tell chaplains this. Our job description, Army Regulation 165-1, says the primary mission of the military chaplain is to advise command and provide moral and spiritual support to soldiers. You want to do that. You communicate with your leadership. Communicate with command. Tell them what's going on with you. Ask what's going on with them. Ask questions. You have to. You must keep your command on board with whatever is happening in your life that could have some measure of influence on you not showing up. Okay? It's very important. And also listen. Become a very good listener. Listen to what soldiers have to say. Listen to their stories. Listen to them tell you, because they will. They'll tell you their perspective. They will tell you how this situation or whatever situation had a tremendous effect on them. So that's what I say. Communicate and listen.
What is your final thoughts on everything we talked about and your final message to women veterans who are struggling out there, young women who wants to go in, and most importantly, how can we support you in this competition?
Oh my goodness, thank you. My final message to female veterans is you need a mentor. If that mentor is me, then you can find me on Instagram, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, it would be Dr. Alfeia DeVaughn-Goodwin. On Facebook, Alfeia DG, Miss Veteran America 2023. Because mentoring is very important. What most people don't understand is it is not about the mentee. It's not about the mentor selecting the mentee. It's about the mentee selecting a mentor. This is what most people don't get. Most mentees, the mentee selects the mentor. Find that person that you want to bring you through, that you want to follow, that you want to shadow. This is very important because you need that. Even if it's just someone to bounce your ideas off of. You need that extra set of eyes, that extra set of ears, that experience, so that you don't have to walk through the fire, because people like me have already done that for you. And the second part of your question, to support me, your 2023 Miss Veteran America finalist, You can donate to Final Salute at www.finalsalute.inc or to MissVeteranAmerica.com. And don't forget, Alfeia DeVaughn-Goodwin 2023. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Donate, donate, donate. Go to my social media. Contact me. Communicate. Let's talk. Talk to me.
Well, thank you for coming in today.
Yes.
You are a visionary, a trailblazer, America's lovable #1 troublemaker, and you're all around America's Alfie.
Thank you.
Which sums up so many things because that's such a playful name and it's such warmth there, and that's who you are.
Thank you.
You may have been Philly Patrol, you may have been the tough as nails chaplain in the military, but you are America's Alfie.
America's Alfie. Thank you.
And my personal living example of Black Canary.
Thank you.
DC, take hint, someone you can actually recruit for a role. Okay, so when are we going to get your memoirs?
Oh my goodness. Do you know I have kept a journal since I was 15 years old?
Wow.
Yeah, I literally have a drawer with nothing but journals in it.
So when are you taking that to the editor?
I don't know yet, but I have so many books.
So that's more than a reason for everyone to stay tuned, like, subscribe, and keep an eye out for part 2 when we go over your release of your memoirs.
Thank you.
So don't forget, everyone, support Alfeia Goodwin as a finalist in Miss Veteran competition.
Yes, thank you.
Miss Veteran America competition.
Yes.
Take care. God